IO Table Talks.
Blenden met Brian.
Blenden met Brian.
But I actually always say, gathering the data is not the hard part. I actually even go a step further and I say a monkey can do that, which is not fully true, right? Because they're very capable people.
Welkom bij IO Table Talks, Blenden met Brian. In deze podcastserie gaat Brian Heerman het gesprek aan met gasten uit verschillende branches en sectoren. En over blenden gesproken. In elke podcastaflevering blendt Brian de favoriete cocktail of mocktail van zijn gast. Want zeg nou zelf, met een drankje wordt toch elk gesprek beter?
To say that today's guest has a digital DNA is an understatement. Her impressive professional career spans a number of great companies in Belgium and abroad, including Lego, Egmont, Overtoom en Manutan, Studio 100, Carrefour, Brussels Airport, and, since August 2022, Lyreco. And in those various roles, she has built a rich experience at the intersection of strategy, marketing, digital, and e-commerce. She was recently a guest at IO Table Talks in Antwerp and stood out because of her down-to-earth and sharp outlook and her humor. I am happy that she is my guest today. The Group Digital Commerce Director of Lyreco, Jo De Lange. Welcome. You are a woman with an impressive background, a lot of things you have been doing professionally, both in Belgium and also abroad. And I've gotten to know you in Antwerp, and I saw a woman with a lot of energy, a lot of drive, a lot of humor as well.
Thank you.
That was at least my opinion. But please tell the listeners, who is the woman behind the professional Jo De Lange? Can you tell me a little bit more about that?
Sure. Well, I've always been a person who likes variation, which you probably see in my CV, but it's also because I get bored quite quickly. So you see that in my CV because, as you said, I worked in many different countries, but I also worked in many different industries. And it was in approximately 2000 that I finally found something that I thought, yeah, this is it. And it was actually digital. And why digital? Because, in 2000 there weren't a lot of companies who did it yet, but I have found that you never really have to do 2 years the same thing. So I love it. So digital it is. Second thing which is stable in my life is my husband. He's the perfect guy.
Oh, tell me about that. Maybe I can learn something.
Well, I wouldn't say I'm always the easiest, and he puts up with a lot of my weird sides.
Okay, well, I think that would be a little bit, exaggerated. I think that you're not weird, you're quite interesting. And that's why you're sitting over here. So you say you got quite bored also professionally, because you see 2-3 years you are working within digital, but for various companies. And of course, Lyreco is the best company there is. But besides Lyreco, what is the company or the job that you, when you look back, you are most fond of?
Well, looking back at it next to Lyreco, of course, is probably Lego. So I worked 3 to 4 years for Lego between 2000 and 2004 approximately. And it was just very family-minded. So you actually felt as part of the family. In addition to that, they always wanted to try something new. So even in 2000, they launched their first direct-to-consumer e-commerce channel, which was quite ahead of most of the competitors, actually. But also in a work environment, actually, they try to stimulate creativity, which I think is very important. And for instance, there was always a big pot of Lego on the table, and during the meetings, you were welcome to create a couple of things. Loved it.
Well, I think that the CEO of IO, Peter Janssens, would also love to be at that place because he is quite a renowned Lego fanatic. So nice to hear. Now talk a little bit more about Lyreco. Could you give me a short elevator pitch on the company? What is the company exactly? What does it do? How big it is? How many countries?
Sure. So Lyreco ranks amongst the top worldwide distributors of workplace supply solutions, business to business. Very important. We have about 12,000 employees and are physically present in 25 countries. So our ranges include GOP, which stands for General Office Products, for which we are most known. But in addition to that, we are quite strong in tech and print, what we call life at work, so well-being at the workplace, which for instance, coffee, catering, that type of solutions, hygiene and cleaning products, and not to forget, recently as well, a couple of years ago, we bought a company, InterSafe, which is very strong in PPE, which stands for personal protection equipment.
Right. So it's quite a large range of everything that everybody needs at the workplace, actually. That's the short
Indeed,
term,
we always say a great working day delivered.
by Lyreco. Nice. Within this season's Table Talk theme, No Future Without a Past, looking forward from a strategic retrospective, we talk with thought leaders from various sectors about the wave of digital innovation which will drastically change the playing field and rules for brands and organizations in the coming years. And what that means for your organization, marketing communications, digital infrastructure, and future propositions and business model. In other words, what can we expect from the current wave of digital innovation driven by, amongst others, AI and machine learning, with all the experience and knowledge of previous digital innovations in our backpack. You were our guest at the Table Talk dinner at IO Campus Antwerp, and just like then, in this podcast, we will discuss this topic based on 4 questions that will be posed to you by some of my IO colleagues. But before we go to the questions, we are gonna blend your favorite cocktail. But when I asked you also already in Antwerp, what is your favorite cocktail? You said, well, I'm not really a cocktail drinker. It's so fancy. I'm not that fancy. But you said, okay, but if you really need to make a cocktail, make it a mocktail, and then a gin tonic will do. Indeed. But why? You don't drink cocktails also not at a party?
Well, I do once in a while have a cocktail. If I drink at all, it's mostly a cocktail, and it would be mostly a gin tonic. Of course, now I've said, let's make it a mocktail because it's still quite early in the day. And why a gin tonic? I actually lived in the UK for 10 years. Well, if there's one drink which everybody can associate with the UK, it's a good gin tonic. Hence, it always takes me back to the great times that I actually had there.
Yeah, I told you also at Antwerp, I'm also a gin and tonic freak. I even have my own brand,
yes, indeed.
Spoonbill, but we don't have an alcohol-free version of the gin. So today I brought with me the Tangueray 0.0 gin. I'm going to use that and I'm going to put it in the glass. Normally, I would put a lot of ice in the cup, the coppa. But because we are doing this podcast and we are not done yet, I'm afraid that the ice will melt. So I start with putting 50 milliliters of this alcohol-free gin of Tangueray in the glass. And while we are doing it, we are listening to the first question by Jasmin van Broekhoven, and she is head of accounts at IO.
Hi Jo, as a major player and market leader, I can imagine that Lyreco has already had its first experience when it comes to deploying generative AI within marketing communications, content for your e-commerce platform, or for example, within customer service. Can you tell a little bit more about this?
All right, so first maybe we do a recap for the listener as what actually generative AI is. So it's actually a type of artificial intelligence technology that can be used to create various type of content, whether that is text, images, audio, etc. So if we actually now look at Lyreco, what we actually do, we actually have been using AI to create product content. More specifically, the texts that you find, as we have such a large assortment. So we call it NLG, Natural Language Generation, and it's a program that uses AI to actually produce, based on the technical attributes, we create our product descriptions. And I actually looked it up for you, and actually 80% of our group web assortment uses NLG, so generative AI, to come up with product descriptions. Why is it great? First of all, you create unique content, which is always good for your SEO position. And in addition to that, the quality of the generated product descriptions is very high. So we're very happy with that. And second benefit is for the Benelux, we have created more than 8,500 texts. Normally, it would take us about 100 days in less than 10 minutes to give you an idea how powerful it can be. We're really happy with, as I said, the quality that is generated and actually the savings that we made. Another benefit we should not forget, as we're present in 25 markets, everything needs to be translated. It used to take quite a long time, quite a lot of money. Now it all has become so much easier. So that is one example. We're currently investigating what else we can do with generative AI, but it actually shows that if you're a company with a large assortment, it is definitely something for you.
Well, that's really interesting to hear. But are you actually saying that there is no human interference in this job, these product descriptions at all? Or is it, generated by the AI and also edited by humans? Or how do you see it?
So, because, we're still relatively early in the learning process of, in general, using generative AI, there is actually still a human that quickly checks. But the saving in time is still amazing. And the more we will feel confident with what we see, the less checks will be necessary. So the biggest check is not so much, is it properly written? But currently it is, are the words that the translations very correct, yes or no? But again, we find very high quality so far.
Yeah, and also in the tone of voice of your brand.
Yes, indeed. But that is, you can set in advance the type of words that you would like to use, the tone of voice you would like to use. They're all specifications. You can kind of tell the bot in advance as to how to treat your texts.
Yeah, a well-trained bot,
Indeed.
actually. Hey, and now we're talking about generating content, for all your product descriptions, etc., for all those websites, including all those language translations, which obviously saves you tons of time and money, I can imagine. But also as an e-commerce player, I also can imagine that, your customer service process is also really important. Is your company, is Lyreco, already using AI within that process from answering customer questions, etc., etc.?
Currently, it's something that we are having discussions on, but we currently don't do it. Why? Because we actually find the human element in the relationship very important. You also see that if you look at the number of salespeople that we have, we're probably a company in our industry with the biggest amount of salespeople on the road. And it's because we find that human element so important. So we are discussing it. But currently we're saying, actually, we want to make sure we keep that connection with the customer. And there's been loads of books written about this, but it's how do you merge or marry the technical aspects with the human aspect.
Yeah, actually, that's, how to stay authentic as a brand, I think, indeed. During the table talk, you made this little joke about, you needed to write your new strategy and maybe you should ask ChatGPT to help you out. Without joking, are you using generative AI yourself in your day-to-day work?
A good question. So in the meantime, I have actually written our new strategy. No, I did not use generative AI. What I did do just for fun is to actually see how good it would be. But I haven't actually used the material, but just for fun because we had the discussion. So in my own free time, I was like, I'm just going to see what it does. But what I do see is that actually the younger generation at work, they're much, not that I am actually old, but the younger generation do tend to be more at home, I would say, with the new technology. And I have seen somebody use it.
Yeah.
To my surprise. Again, we didn't necessarily use it, but it's just more as a health check. What I am thinking, does it make sense, yes or no?
Yeah. Well, what also does make sense is my next step in your alcohol-free gin and tonic. And we're going to garnish it. We're going to garnish it at the end. We are going to use some, red summer fruit. And the reason for that is, we get quite depressed when we look outside. So I hope to bring some summer in your glass, at least. But before I'm gonna take, this nice red summer fruit, we're gonna listen to the next question, and that's from Hanne Keulaars, and she is account director at IO.
Dear Jo, as an e-commerce player, Lyreco will have access to a large mountain of first-party customer data. Is operational knowledge and expertise in data science and data analytics a key pillar within your organization? Can you tell a bit more about your organization in this regard?
So as for most companies, Lyreco has a data department. That department actually includes data analysts and data scientists, because still today it's not the same role, right? For digital commerce, which is my area of responsibility, I actually have a dedicated team which are assigned to me, and they are data analysts, but they're supported by the data scientists as and when necessary. So in the past, let's say since I have started a small 2 years ago, we have really looked at increasing the amount of data that is actually available to use and that can be measured. So we have made sure we have the right databases, the information is available. But I actually always say, actually gathering the data is not the hard part. I actually even go a step further and I say a monkey can do that, which is not fully true, right? Because they're very capable people. But what is really the hard part is to understand the business value behind your data. So it is not just to say, oh, I see we've had this many visitors, or they come and look at this and this and this, but what you actually do with that. That is what is important to me. So it's really always have to keep the business angle. So for instance, what we have built in the past year is a whole suite of dashboards that goes from e-commerce KPIs, a new business dashboard, which new customers are we gathering, where are they coming from, how long are they staying, attribution model, a customer lifetime value model. So a whole suite of tools that the countries can use. This is also kind of, you would say it's strange, but it's relatively new because there's definitions behind each of these dashboards, and each of the countries use their own definitions, which meant it was very hard to learn from each other because your definition could have been different than the one used in Thailand, for instance. So we have all aligned that, which now makes it possible to really share the information and to learn from each other. And what we do then, so now we have all this information available, we then make sure that all relevant other departments also use this data. For instance, it starts with the CX department, and they can actually use that to create the ideal user journey. Afterwards, it goes to the PO, product owner organization, which report to myself, and they will look at the information and see how we can improve our tools and our platforms. Afterwards, it goes, for instance, to our marketing department. They will then again see how do we improve. So it is important not just that the data is available, but that each and every single department in your company actually uses it also in a consistent way. So in the end, it is not just Lyreco who's happy, but more importantly, it's the customer who's happy.
Yeah, at the end of the day, you're doing it for the customer at least. But if I listen to you very carefully, I'm quite impressed. But then you might say that data is actually the backbone of all the departments today and quite integrated, also developed. Is that something? Is this data discipline, this data knowledge, not only gathering but also making it worthy information for all those departments? This capability is something that you have internally, fully internally, or do you use external partners for that? How are you organized?
Well, actually, if you look at Lyreco overall, because we're also a family-owned business, we exist approximately 100 years. In 2026, we'll have our birthday. And a lot of what we do is in-house. So whether you look at the data department or even developing our platforms, etc., actually a lot is done internally. So you can then also see, what is your core. And for us, data is one of the elements that is core and that will help you set apart from all your competitors. So yes, internally. Mostly internally.
And is it more centralized then, and then you cater for all the countries, or do you have a lot of knowledge in the countries itself? How are you organized on this part?
So we always have group structure. Also for the data team, we have a big data team which is managed out of the group, where all the countries can have the benefits of. That's why I said that we build dashboard for all the countries. But then you have some resources locally that actually can then help make the difference for the country itself. Because of course, Thailand is not the same as Wise, or Wise is UK and Ireland. They're not the same as Sweden or Spain. So locally, we also have people who then adapt what we do on a group level and see how can we localize it and make sure we get the top-notch benefit out of it. So we all also make sure that, the capabilities at group are strong, but the capabilities in the countries are as strong.
Really important as well. Also important is your gin and tonic. Next to the red summer fruit, I'm going to put some sun in the glass as well. So that would be some orange, a slice of orange. And we have it here on the table already. But before I'm going to do that, we're going to listen to the next question. And that's from Natalie Ryan. And she is account manager at IO.
Dear Jo, Lyreco's target audiences are companies. Therefore, you develop business-to-business marketing campaigns. Can you tell us if you use data-driven media mix modeling to determine the optimal mix of media channels to optimally reach your target audience? Or is there instead a lot of room for gut feeling and trial and error?
So we always work hard on improving what we do on a day-to-day basis. Traditionally, we've been a company which, as I said before, is very strong due to our fantastic and extended sales force in each and every market that we're present. In addition to that, what we see that as a B2B company, our media investments tend to be smaller as a B2C companies. You will see that across pretty much all B2B versus B2C. So it is even more important to be very data-driven, right? Because our budgets are smaller. So they always say, half of the euro that you spend on marketing is wasted. Well, we make sure that it's more than half of the euro that is not wasted. So some examples where we are data-driven is what I mentioned earlier today. But your question is also about trial and error. And that for us is very important. So recently, we've also really invested in additional tools that will help with trial and error. So for instance, A/B test tools, where you can actually see what works better, A or B. So we don't believe in the idea of the hippo, the highest paid person's opinion, but we actually look at what the customer tells us, and not only what they tell us, but what they actually do, because sometimes what the customer says and what the customer does is not necessarily. So we also look at what the customer actually does. In addition to that, our CX customer experience department have set up a test and learn framework, which we're rolling out in pretty much everything we do as well. So it is an essential framework which guarantees the effectiveness of everything we do. So the aim is to ensure that every decision is based on realistic feedback from our customers and data. So we combine quantitative and qualitative information. Most important there to say, because often people think, oh, I've done research, oh, I've done some testing. No, it's not a one shot. It's something you have to continue over and over and over again. And as I said, it's really not one department, but it's an ID that has to be used throughout the company. So that was about the trial and error, but your question also included, what about, is there no more space for gut feeling? And that is very important because I did say we have strong capabilities at group, but also at the local countries. In the countries, we have people who have worked for us for years. So they have a lot of local knowledge. And we actually use that. So we say, okay, there's a group model, but we leave enough room in the countries to adapt and to innovate. What we then say, actually, there's a certain approach to innovate, and they try and test. If it is successful, there's always clear KPIs, clear measurements, and if it works, we then have the agreement, we will share it with the other countries. So that country can then create best practices. Those will be reviewed by the group and then will be rolled out to all our other countries. So it's not just one country that is learning, but we take the way that we are set up to benefit all of the different countries, which helps us grow everywhere. It's one of the reasons why we were also able to grow our revenues for instance, in 2016, we had a revenue of about 2 billion. Currently, last year, we ended just under 3 billion. So, in just over 5 years, that's a whole billion more. So you cannot, of course, we had some acquisitions, etc., but it is also improvements within the countries, and it's thanks to the people.
So it's in that case not the hippo, but mostly the EPO, the experienced person's opinion. Probably that are you using in those countries. And let's talk a little bit more about your marketing activities more specifically. I would guess that your marketing activities would primarily be more conversion driven. instead of more brand driven, or am I mistaken?
Well, brand is always important, right? Because if the customer trusts your brand, they will also be more likely to look at you as somebody who is knowledgeable and experienced, and what they buy, they will, be more happy with what you buy, hence they will buy more. So brand is definitely important. Acquisition is important because otherwise you cannot continue growing at the speed which we have set for ourselves. Actually, the target I just mentioned was a target we aim to reach by 2026. We're already there. So we're not happy with that. We have increased our target. For that, we need to acquire more customers, but we also want to make sure that with the customers that we have, we retain them, we prevent churn, and we also propose the additional product ranges that we offer. Because some, as I mentioned, we're known for GOP, general office products. We're not always known for personal protection equipment. So we also use data and we see, oh, you've already used this, but maybe we can propose you something that you might not have known we actually sell.
So content marketing is also an important part within that, probably.
It is, and it will become even more important in the future.
Can you tell a little bit more on how you bring this message across? So specifically digitally, what is your media mix online? How does it look like? I know it's a lot of data driven. You've told me a lot about, but when you look all in all, so what are the most important platforms, channels that you're using as Lyreco to get your message across, your content across?
It's mostly based on owned media. So our own web shop, we have a lot of separate websites where we inform customers about specific ranges, about extended ranges, etc., etc. So it really, for the moment, turns all about owned platforms. Of course, again, we're always looking at innovating, seeing where we can actually change that. And we should not underestimate, because we have such, I know you asked about digital, but we have such a large physical sales force. There's still quite a lot of physical material which needs to be created as well. So more and more, it's not on or offline. It's not how the customer thinks. It's really, as we know, how you bring the two together.
Fully integrated.
Yeah.
What I'm going to integrate now is the tonic with the gin 0.0. And I brought today as a tonic for you the Fever Tree Clementine tonic.
Sounds great.
Yeah, that has a dash of Clementine in it. Mm-hmm. Otherwise, it wouldn't be called Clementine, which gives it a little nice fruity flavor. And I'm going to put 150 milliliters of this tonic in the glass. And while I'm doing this, we're going to listen to Matthias Vissers. He is the marketing manager at IO.
Hi, Jo. The digital developments of, among others, AI and machine learning are going very fast, offering new opportunities, but of course also the necessary threats. Do you see Lyreco's proposition continuing to innovate, change, or perhaps expand in the future in order to still remain relevant to your target audience in 5 or even 10 years from now?
So far, we've been quite successful in remaining relevant for our audience. Hence, that's why I mentioned that we were able to grow from 2 to 3 billion euros in just over 5 years. But we always continue and make sure that we're relevant. Hence, the test and learn that I already mentioned. If you look at what we actually stand for, we want to build our legacy, and it really has been based on 100 years of pioneership. So the pioneership element is very important to us, and hence innovation, not just on products and services, but in everything we do. That includes the platforms that we offer to our customers to, for instance, order upon. And I'll give you a couple of examples there where we try to make sure that we stay relevant. First of all, like last year, we implemented a new internal search engine. It was from Algolia, you might have heard of it or not so important. And in the new internal search engine, AI is actually included. So it will propose synonyms that we can use or negative keywords. So there's a lot of elements which any marketeer can then use and say, okay, how am I going to use the AI to make what my customer sees more relevant? But it's also important, the same tools can actually be used by your merchandising department to see which products did the customer search for and we did not offer. So we use the same type of information by another department who then sees, should I increase my range? Should I get rid of some products because they're never searched for? So if you have customers searching for a product that has no search result, we have to look at what happens with that. So that was one example. Another example, that was the example of last year, the example of this year. We're looking at a new recommendation engine and a new CDP, customer data platform. Recommendation engine, we all know, if you like X, you will also like Y. Also has AI built in. Again, to make sure that whatever we propose, we recommend, is relevant. It's all about relevance. Otherwise, the customer will not come back. The customer will not come back, but the Google bots will also not come back. So your SEO will become a lot worse. A CDP is also an element where we try to increase the relevance because we bring together the data that we have on our customers anyway, which is name, location, types of products they buy. With information we have, how long did they look at a certain product page? What did they click on? Which type of social media do they use? And we bring together the information to then make sure whatever we propose is relevant, not just on our own website, but also on the marketing platforms that we use, whether that is Google advertising or Facebook or LinkedIn, etc. So relevancy, important for Google, even more important for us, otherwise our customers will not come back.
Those are great examples of using for using innovation or innovative products or AI, etc., to keep up actually with the demands from your clients also in the future and to make it even more sharp and quicker, etc. But when you look at another way, so this new technology also might trigger companies to change their or to extend maybe their proposition. Now the proposition is, everything for everybody at work. Let me do it in my own words. But I can imagine that you might extend that proposition also towards the future. Do you have those discussions also at Lyreco?
Absolutely. The merchandising is so the range, whether it's a product or a service, is very important for us. And what you see in the last couple of years is that services have even become more important. So for instance, because we're in Belgium, in the Benelux, the coffee solutions have become much more important. And it's also because we don't just deliver the coffee, but we will look at, which machines to go with it. Do we actually give you the maintenance of the coffee machines? And now I'm not talking about your coffee machine at home, right? But we're talking about huge machines for big companies. So there as well, we actually look and we listen to our customer and we adapt and innovate. But as I said, services in the last couple of years have become more and more important. Give you an example of South Korea, where we also present, which I quite like. The well-being services have grown dramatically, and we even provide Christmas trees for Christmas, and we provide ways on how to provide full lunches, and so everything, those service elements have become more and more important.
Massages at work.
Actually, it's a good example, but yes, they do that as well. We don't have it in Europe yet, but in Asia, it's a very different market. And often it's a good source of innovation as well to be present in Asia, because what they do there is not necessarily what we do here in Europe.
Well, but services, actually, this is what you're saying, more and more services geared towards this office situation is getting more and more important toward the future. Nice to listen. Hey, my last question. When you look at your current business and you have your competitors in the market, the clear competitors, but do you see any new competitors coming in the market out of completely different directions into your business? Is that something that you're seeing?
So competitor-wise, what we see is that it's quite scattered across Europe. So you have only a few competitors which are delivered to as many countries as we do. So it's much more localized. But then if you look at one which is on top of mind of everybody, of course, Amazon B2B.
Yeah, marketplaces.
So marketplaces, indeed. So we definitely see that. But I would say we have a big benefit of providing the human element. Try to contact somebody at Amazon. Good luck.
Actually, I've never tried, but I'm not. When I'm listening to you, I think I won't even try. So, but what we are gonna try is this 0.0 gin and tonic. So
Can't wait.
Well, I'm getting a bit thirsty as well. So what I'm going to do now, I already put the gin and the tonic in the glass. So what I'm going to do now is add some ice, because as said, normally you should put the ice first. And I always say you cannot put too much ice in your gin and tonic.
You're not exaggerating when you're saying a lot of ice, but
Yeah.
it looks fantastic.
I'm not joking. The more ice, the colder it gets, and the slower the ice melts. So that's. Then I would put some red fruit in the G&T, all kind of fruits. A little bit of summer in the glass, and we finally also, as said, add the sun in the glass by the orange slice, which makes it always sunny. The sun goes down in the glass now, but it always looks nice.
Looks like restaurant quality.
Yeah, well, let's see. I'm gonna do a little spin, just a little, so also the color takes over a bit, makes it a little bit more pink. And then they say the proof is in the eating, but in this case, the proof is in the drinking. Here you go.
Thank you.
And I would say cheers.
Cheers.
And I'm curious to hear if you like this. Here you go.
I see where you get the idea of the summer. It takes me back. Only thing I need now is less rain and more sun.
And upon this great ending and great wish, I would end this podcast. Thank you very much, Jo, for your insightful talk today and all the information you've given us in this podcast. And this is the end of the first episode of this season's podcast. Thank you, and thank you for listening.
My pleasure.
Dit was Blenden met Brian, een podcast van Blended Agency I.O. Wil je meer afleveringen beluisteren? Abonneer je dan nu op deze podcastserie. We gaan met gasten uit verschillende branches in gesprek over de digitale uitdagingen die er leven. Denk je nou dat jij een goede gast zou zijn bij een van de I.O. Table Talks? Ga dan naar iodigital.com/tabletalks. Tot de volgende keer!